Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Costa Rica Crypto, and today is a little bit, it's a little bit almost surreal for me because I spent the last many months, particularly during the launch, watching this individual and following a lot of his live shows, and I'm watching some of the really cool work that he's done for the community. So today I have the opportunity and the pleasure to speak to Kevin Wilcox from EOSGO as well as the EOS Alliance. Welcome, Kevin. It's a pleasure to have you here. And thanks for spending a little bit of time with me today.
Hey, Matt. Yeah, thanks a lot for having me. It's hearing you say that is very flattering. You know, it's just mainly Blue Jays and I fooling around there on those EOS radio shows. That's the way we see it. It's a lot of fun. And so hearing from someone who has followed along and kind of enjoyed it, we appreciate that. Yeah, it's great to be here, man. And I also really respect the work you've done. You know, you're putting out some great videos, and I've watched most of them all the way through at this point. And it's great to get their perspectives over and over, because you have to realize that things are changing so rapidly that even I saw your interview with NS James pop up. I was like, I need to watch that. I haven't heard from him in about a month. I need to see what he's up to. And of course, he's changed pretty much everything in the last month. He's got his desktop, scattered desktop, and working on mobile now. I just heard, and he's building that proof of concept game. I mean, that guy just doesn't stop. He's something else. So yeah, it's good to see you in the community, sort of. Building this new channel, new opportunity for everybody to reach out and connect. So I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm honored to be here too, man. And as I said, it's kind of surreal to be talking to you. Watch a ton of your stuff, huge fan. I want to kind of, before we get going here, I just want to peel it back a couple of layers. And I want to ask you just some really basic questions, right? As I said, I've really enjoyed you and Blue Jays, who kind of the pioneers of this whole thing on EOSGO. And I guess one question I had in the back of my mind was, what's kind of your background? Like, where did you grow up? And was EOSGO kind of a step outside of your normal comfort zone? Like, how did you go from enthusiast to media personality? Did you have a background in this stuff, or where did it all start?
I mean, I have no background, I have to say. It was back in December of 2017. The price was starting to go crazy for everything, right? For cryptocurrencies in general. And I looked around, and I was working my usual, I'm an optician by trade before, and working in an optometry office here in North Carolina, United States. I'm originally from Maine in the United States, so I looked around in the cryptocurrency space, and I saw that it seemed like nobody actually knew kind of what they were doing, right? It seemed like I could either put money in and just hope it goes up and then hope things turn out really well. I kind of thought maybe it was a bubble, so I wasn't sure if that would work out, right? But then I also thought, well, wait a second, this is a whole new burgeoning industry. It's brand new. I have no experience, but neither does anybody else. So I might as well just dive in here and see what happens. I was on Telegram messing around. I think I had a pseudonym at that point, just kind of seeing all the different channels starting to pop up. This was back when the EOSIO governance channel was just being formed, right? And there were, 20 people in there starting to have debates. And so I said, you know what? Let me just figure out a way to kind of get involved. And I looked around. There were no block producer candidates at all back then. It was just, we needed kind of a way to, funny enough, we needed a way to decide how to create debates and then also keep them more permanent. So we needed a forum, right, online, instead of just Telegram, where you had these debates, but then everybody forgets about it. A lot of folks don't see it, so on and so forth. So started the EOSGO forums back in 2017, December. And it was actually Thomas Cox. He started the first forum with Block.one. He was their vice president of product at the time. And he had started a forum to help address that issue. I'd already been thinking about it, and I saw him do that. And I messaged him on Telegram directly and said, hey, my name's Kevin. You guys, Block.one is not supposed to help with community initiatives. It says so in your white paper. It says you're not involved with the launch. The community is supposed to do all this. So I'm going to launch my own forum and compete with yours and see if the community will choose ours over yours. And it wasn't much of a competition. I mean, he kind of said, okay, yeah, you're right. And he kind of helped drive traffic to the EOSGO forums, and then he later shut down the other one. It only lasted like 20 days. It was a trial they were doing. And then the rest is sort of history. I mean, Blue Jays and we then went up in January this year. We met on Telegram through EOSGO, and then we decided to reach out to Block.one and see if they'd let us up there to do an interview, And we got the chance to sit down with Dan Larimer and Thomas Cox himself up there in Blacksburg, Virginia. Blue Jays flew up from where he lived, and we drove up there. We bonded. We had a great time. It was just an honor to meet Dan, of course. and to shake Thomas's hand. It was incredible. Shot those videos, put them out for the community. We sourced a bunch of questions from the community before we went up there to try and get a general sense for what they wanted Dan to answer. The questions back then were a lot different. It was things like, what does a block producer look like? What could happen with this? Block producer pay was much different back then. It was going to be possibly 3% of the inflation, which would have meant block producers were basically venture capitalists. So anyway, we went up there and we did that, shot the videos. We came back. We realized a lot of folks had watched those videos and they wanted to see more regular content. And so Blue Jays and I, mostly Blue Jays, came up with EOS Radio to put onto the EOSGO channels. And so we did the every Monday, the weekly live video shows. So that's where a lot of folks have seen us goofing around and talking to everybody in the ecosystem. I mean, as you know by now, because of the videos you've done, a lot of friendly, amazing people, right? And they all kind of want to reach out. Everybody's working on something. They want to talk about it, but also it's important to network in this community and to get to know everybody else. And sort of getting on these shows and talking and meeting everybody is a good way to do it. So that's sort of a very long answer to your simple question. But the answer, going way back to your initial question, did I have any background, is no. I just basically jumped off the cliff and said, I'm going to try this. And sure enough, it just hard to believe. It really is hard to believe looking back now that it actually worked out. And to me, it's one of my great passions now is that if you want to change your life and if you want to do something that is much different than your current career, blockchain in general and EOS specifically, there are so many opportunities. There's so many doors open, just walk through one of them, right? All you got to do is put out the effort, start doing something that you're passionate about, and you can make it happen.
I think that's a great answer. And that's, even for me in the same regard, still a very small fish, but it's very, it's kind of like, it's this weird little, it's odd having you on the channel because I did watch you guys. You guys were kind of the first people, and it's cool to hear that, you kind of came from humble beginnings, because it seems like you've built a really established network right now and you're working on some really important things that we're going to kind of get into in the interview in a little bit here. I guess just to kind of follow up on that question, when did you like, who told you about EOS? When did you see it? Like, how did that happen? What did that look like?
All right, man, you ready for this? It was Reddit cryptocurrency subreddit. Yeah, that place. And not only did I hear about it there, I read about it. It was August 2017, so a few months before I got into EOS, or dove in, I should say. August 2017, I first heard about Bitcoin in my entire life, right? I should say I'd heard about it before. I'd never looked into it. Of course, August 1st was when Bitcoin Cash split off from Bitcoin, and it was mainstream media news. And I saw it, and I started reading into it, and I said, whoa, this is interesting. Of course, right? At first, you're going, wow, this free money? What is this? This is ridiculous. So it fell down the rabbit hole, right? And found out about EOS a few weeks later as I was reading ridiculous, 24 hours a day, just reading about cryptocurrency, trying to learn what the heck it was, what was going on there, learn about blockchain, decentralization. It all started to dawn on me how incredible this whole technology is. Read about EOS in August on the cryptocurrency subreddit, and they said it was a scam. And so I discounted it. I didn't even look into it. Didn't care, as hard as that is to believe. And so for 2 months, I was just researching all the other coins. And I always had that same question in my mind with, this not going to scale, right? Proof of work doesn't work in my mind for grand scale, for applications. Yep. Fees are never going to work. I can't tell my grandma, hey, you need to go on this shopping site, or you need to go on this new social media site to post pictures of me, your grandson, and you need to pay fees as you do it, Grandma. And she's not going to, she can barely use Facebook to begin with. It needs to be as easy as possible. It needs to be free. It needs to work, right? It needs to scale. So I happened across Dan Larimer's 2017, Consensus 2017 presentation about EOS when he first introduced it at Consensus in New York, May 2017. I read about EOS again on a blog. It said EOS could be good, better than Ethereum. And I was like, all right, well, I'll just look into this scam coin, quote unquote scam coin. And when I saw a presentation and I heard Dan answer every single question I had about cryptocurrency, and he was already working on this on a grand scale with a great project, and he kind of got it, right? He understood Grandma's problems. I didn't know what Steam it was at that point really either. I'd seen it, but I didn't understand it. But it was clear that he was light years ahead of everybody else. There was no competition anymore. And it was took me 2 or 3 days to fully wrap my head around the ICO, Why are they raising so much money? Those typical questions. But once it all clicked, it was like the coin market cap didn't matter anymore. It was just EOS in my mind. There were no other coins, projects. None of those they couldn't succeed because they had all those problems that Dan was working on fixing with EOS. So that's around December that I did a couple of months of that, just obsessive going, wow, EOS, wow, that's the future. And then, like I said, in December, it was just kind of that moment where it's, you know what, I could either just sit around and hope the price goes up more and more and more, or I could just dive into the community and try to make a career of this, do some satisfying work, really satisfying, wonderful, interesting work, because I was already reading about EOS 24/7 and I loved everything about it. So why not try to make it work out of it? And yeah, so there's another long answer for your question, but
it's all good. I enjoy it. I know people want to learn a little bit more about you. It's kind of funny that you should mention the whole scam thing, because that's what brought me into it. I saw this and I was like, wait, this doesn't make any sense. Like, this guy's already highly successful. He's made other really, really good projects. There's a lot of support behind it. How is it, if it was some unknown or something like that, and this is just kind of how I correlated it in my, kind of pre-research brain. How would somebody who's been so successful somewhere else come up with this coin and try to steal a bunch of money? Like, clearly the man has already been successful. He's probably already doing quite well. It's funny because that's what really got me asking the questions, and actually ended up ultimately placing my faith in the project, and I'm really, really glad it did. So just to get to know you a little bit better, Kevin, what do you do like when you're not, because we talked a little earlier, when you're not up at 4:00 in the morning with me, doing all the research and conducting chats? What do you do out there for fun? What do you do to relax? Like, what's a good time, Kevin?
For the last 8 months, it's just been EOS pretty much 24/7. My girlfriend and friends can also confirm, and my family as well. But it's all because I've been working up, building towards trying to get involved more with EOS and make it my full-time thing, right? That's always been the long-term goals from December all the way up until recently, where we'll talk about that more with the Alliance, but I'm just very lucky and just thrilled. But going back, I have a dog. We do go out for little hikes on the local quote-unquote mountain, they call it here in North Carolina. It's actually a hill, right? But it has the word mountain attached. So we just go for hikes. And I actually go out and do some contra dancing once in a while, which is a form of a line dance kind of. And so the caller tells you what to do, and then you have a partner, and then you and your partner go up and down. You do the dancing. It's a good way to sort of, when I'm contra dancing, I am not thinking about anything else. And it's a good way to sort of meditate, get your mind off everything, because even with EOS, you do need to clear your mind sometimes and let yourself relax some before you dive back in. 100%.
I agree with you. Fitness is kind of my escape, but I grew up in Canada. I spent a lot of time in Alberta, so I'm very familiar with what you're talking about, believe it or not, in terms of the line dancing. I was going to ask you that we kind of talked about it earlier. You said that everybody has the right to be involved in EOS, and everybody has the right to participate, and that everybody's opinion matters. Where does that conviction come from?
Well, I think that, to me, blockchain is about empowering every individual in my mind. And that's mostly what spoke to me when I understood what Dan was getting at with decentralized autonomous communities, DACs,
yep,
and how aligned incentives could bring everybody towards a goal where they're able to work for their own selves and to work in the way they think is best and to leverage their own skills to the maximum way possible. And because those incentives are aligned, everybody will therefore sort of congeal together and basically sort of move in the right direction together, right? Kind of like one of those big, huge, I've heard Thomas give this analogy before, so I have to give him credit, but it's like those big, huge ball of fish that you see in the ocean, or a bait ball, I think they call it, and just all these thousands of fish moving together sort of in one big ball, and the ball may or may not be going in one particular direction. That's kind of what I view DACs as. They move slowly, but they move, the axe grinds, right? The ball will roll and eventually make its way towards a better future. It's just that large decentralized incentives aligned type of ball needs to figure out exactly what it wants. So that's part of what makes me so passionate is, DACs can disrupt the current thinking and the current centralized model because you have so many actors working towards the same thing. You have organic marketing. You have people of all different skill sets able to sort of rise up the ranks in the leadership roles in the DAC and help provide their skills in the best way possible. And also you're able to cut out so many middlemen that it's really a no-brainer that they'll be able to cut down fees and obviously make the end user a lot happier because they can save 50% off of the normal centralized option. So long story short, blockchain, I guess I get kind of riled up because I'm like most people, I think, in this space, right? We all kind of had this feeling that the current way of doing things with these huge centralized powers, it's just not the way it's supposed to be necessarily. And though EOS, there are some ways where it's a plutocracy, and there are folks who do have more power than others. However, if those powers are not acting in the best interest of the entire community, rather, then they eventually will be pushed aside because the price of the coin could go down, and it would dilute what they have, which is not ideal for them. So in the end, they do kind of have to come back around and work with the community, even though it may take some time, and even though it may take some working from the other parts of the community to bring everybody together like that. So
another good answer.
That kind of roughly summarized what I was trying to get at with your question. But when I start talking about every individual having a chance to sort of make a difference in a DAC, I think that's what gets me most excited. That's really that's what gets me up in the morning and keeps me up till 4 a.m. at night. So.
You and me both, my friend. I love EOS kind of first introduced me to the whole concept of DAX, and it's something I'm really passionate about as well. I have the same feelings. I know it's really important in this industry, to kind of choose a mentor, or in any industry for that matter. Do you have a mentor already? And if so, who might that be and why?
It's always been Thomas Cox, I think. He is the governance aspects. He's very passionate. He wrote the first version of the Constitution that is now in place, a lot of it. Some parts were modified by the community before it went live. He has a lot to do with many aspects of block producer pay. He helped formulate a lot of the worker proposal groups. He helped set a lot of those up. He has a lot of excellent leadership skills built from his previous careers. He probably told you before, he worked at Oracle and IBM and so on. And so when he does something in the community, he is building it on a 20-year foundation of organizing remote groups who are spread across all time zones and helping them come together and not only achieve the goal, but also own the result. So I think that's important. Obviously, with a decentralized community, you need to have a few folks, hopefully, who are kind of leading the charge, making the difference, and they might have different viewpoints, but they're able to sort of come back around and eventually agree on the best viewpoint, or the best one wins kind of thing. Collaborative competition is important. It's capitalism 2.0 is the best way I've heard it put, right? We're all competing as well. We're all trying to make sure that our particular business does really well, or our particular interest is working out well. However, we're actually benefiting the greater whole, and therefore we're all able to collaborate and share more effectively. And that's also why things happen so quickly in EOS, right? I mean, if you want to interview a whole bunch of people in EOS, we all want to talk to you because we're all on the same team. So
yeah, it's been one of the most shocking things for me is how willing the community is to communicate, even with a relative unknown. It's been interesting. I did have the pleasure of speaking to Thomas a few days ago, and I understand. I think he's probably a pretty good choice for a mentor. The guy is a good guy. He's got a brilliant mind, and he's very self-aware, and of course very tuned in with what's going on, and kind of some of the avenues that are worth exploring in EOS. I guess my next question for you is, I peek in and out of the Alliance conversation channel quite a bit, and there are some really, really some great talks, but also some very intense talks. And I would imagine that might lead to a little bit of stress because you help to facilitate some of the communication during some of these talks. What would you say is kind of the most stressful aspect of your job, if you were to have one?
Not stressful yet. I'll tell you that. It'll probably get more stressful here in the next few weeks, I suspect.
Yes.
We are going to start with video calls. And once things start to get going, that chat will pick right back up again. It'll be intense. It's good that we have so many differing opinions, right? I mean, we do need to find out which of those opinions is actually, or which hybrid of those opinions is going to be what this community actually wants. I suspect there will be unfortunately, there will probably be some moderating that has to be done to keep the chat somewhat civil at times. We need to sort of probably set some guidelines here shortly. I personally am not big on rules and guidelines. That's partly why I love decentralization so much. However, I sort of reached out to a few folks and said, hey, do you want to help set some guidelines? Do you have some good baselines for what guidelines could be? And in a distributed chat where passions are very, very high and where folks have it's possible folks have put forth a Constitution article or even an entire Constitution, and they want it adopted because they put so much work into it and because it's a historic moment, right? I mean, what you wrote could be a part of EOS, and EOS could be a new base layer for the entire internet in the future. So it's important. It's exciting, really. So I suspect that will be a difficult part of the job. Like I said, it hasn't happened yet, so we'll find out if it actually turns out to be true. I've always been very impressed and surprised by the community, how well we work together. It is a part of that collaborative competition aspect. It makes more sense to treat each other well and to work together more so than trying to just berate each other and bring each other down, because we are all on the same team at the very end of the day.
I have to agree, and it kind of strikes me a conversation that I had with Luke Stokes. Said the other day, every interaction is voluntary, and it's something that really resonated with me for a lot of different reasons. How would you if you were to describe your role in the Alliance, and then maybe just kind of give a basic explanation for somebody who might not be so well read on EOS, what exactly the function of the Alliance is, what the intention is, and kind of what the plans are moving forward?
This is something I've been trying to describe for family and friends for a long time now, because EOSGO was kind of a similar venture. EOSGO was, of course, it wasn't not nearly as big, didn't have as much funding by any means, didn't have the backing behind it. So basically think of it this way, right? We have a voting republic, right? Just like any country, or a lot of countries, I should say. And in that republic, you have those representatives trying to get elected, and they're going to they'll offer their best effort, but at the same time, there's always going to be an element by the token holders or by the voters who are going, well, you are biased. You are trying to get a position and get elected in that position. You need kind of that binding force in the middle that can kind of bring everybody together. So it's not just the block producers offering their opinions. Also, you need the dApp developers to be able to have a strong voice and a strong presence. And not the token holders themselves are very important in an ecosystem. They're what helps the price rise and stay high. And when the price is higher, we have more inflation going to those block producers. And therefore, they have more money to upgrade their hardware and to put on more meetups and to put on more training in their local area for new developers, things of that nature. So every single part of this ecosystem, every holder is important. And therefore, we need some kind of neutral binding force that can help spread all the information to the entire ecosystem. It's hopefully as neutral as possible. That's what we're trying to go for. And so everybody can stay informed, and then they can also educate themselves more if they wish, and have an opportunity to dive in and make a bigger difference as well if they wish.
I find that it's really the pulse. Now, I'm sure you see me scrolling through there numerous times. I don't so much participate in some of the conversations at this point, but it's kind of my go-to place when I try to figure out what's happening in the system and kind of some of the things that are being talked about. I know there's been a lot of really, really good conversations in there. What's kind of one of your favorite conversations that you've witnessed there or you've been a part of?
Well, there's been a conversation about everything just about at this point. ECAF is always a delicate situation. I'm kind of for a governed blockchain in general, I think. I'm not entirely sure. I'm always willing to be swayed to the other side or to another opinion. I think in the long run, if we have some scalable way that we can arrive at that could work well, where there's very specific cases that might be able to go to ECAF, it could work, possibly. We can't have ECAF being the police, where everybody just takes every case or every problem they have, they want to send to ECAF. They're not adult babysitters. They're just there to help you resolve disputes. If there were some kind of dispute between what the intent of the code was and what actually happened, things of that nature, very, very light cases. Maybe even when it comes to losing tokens, things of that nature, maybe that isn't necessarily something that would go to ECAF. It's possible. Maybe there's a kind of a higher level on a different layer that could be put somewhere else under like the dApp layer. There could be something to help you get your tokens back if you lose them in a dApp you're using, for example. Maybe Scatter will have their own arbitration group. Who knows? But there needs to be something that can scale.
Sorry, I'm familiar, but just in case somebody isn't familiar, what is ECAF?
So ECAF is the core arbitration forum, EOS core arbitration forum, and they were kind of anointed in the Constitution itself. So they were listed as the go-to dispute resolution forum. There was no competition to get that spot. It was really kind of an appointed board, which is what upset a lot of people. They said, who are these guys? They're not elected, so on and so forth. ECAF, they're not really supposed to be elected though. ECAF is supposed to be someone you hire, right?
Of course.
If you want their services, you have to pay for it. And you could choose ECAF, you could choose OCAF, GCAF, whoever you decide to come up on. Those are just made up names, right? Sure. There should be competition ideally, and they'll compete for your services. So if you have a dispute and you're like, well, ECAF is $600 to file a dispute resolution, or just file a case, I should say, you might go over to GCAF because they charge $200 and they're not as well known, but they're trying to build a name for themselves, whatever the case is, right? However, there are aspects of the reason why it not necessarily will work to have competing arbitration forms. But going back to your original question, ECAF, there wasn't a lot of competition for arbitration forms, right? There weren't people clamoring to become the arbitration forum for EOS. It was just the block producer race. That was what everybody cared about. Arbitration still is not a lucrative role in any stretch of the imagination. They've been voluntary the whole way through. They didn't even charge for cases for a long time. And so they became overwhelmed very quickly. They were sort of there. I almost call them a placeholder because they were there to sort of set the first standard and hopefully encourage other arbitration forums to step up, which we have seen with EMAC, which is a group from China. They have had a hard time getting off the ground as well. I think if we had an easier way to help these forums get started, like if there was a clear model for here's how much you should charge, here's how you should advertise yourself, or maybe there was a way that they could start, and then, for example, the Alliance, if people decide they want arbitration down the line, we could help forums advertise themselves, perhaps. A lot of times, these arbitrators don't have great PR skills. They're not marketers. They just want to help resolve cases. They're not good with business development, so they may not charge enough money. Things of that nature, right? The folks who are interested in arbitration in general. That's kind of what we've seen with ECAF. The only reason I say that is because they just have not focused on that aspect, and therefore it's been very hard for them to scale up and to make money and to focus on marketing and PR because it's just not in their strength, not their interest. Sure. I hope that answers your question. I think I got way off track again, but excuse me as I do. I tend to, we talk about EOS, man. It's just like I spit everything I know when I spit it all out, but and I should say, you mentioned Luke Stokes. I'm a big fan of his. He is a huge DAC fan, of course, right? And I didn't know about him until April, maybe. He kind of came out of nowhere from Steemit. Yep. And he's a great guy. I like Luke a lot. So,
me too. I think he's super intelligent, and it was interesting. I went to go have a talk with him about EOS DAC, and it just got blown into this big thing where we talked about a lot of life philosophy stuff, and it was really interesting to get to know him a lot more in depth because he has a lot of layers to him, and very intelligent, I think good-natured guy with the best of the community at heart. What would you say to, and we talked a little bit about kind of in the pre-talk, what would you say to somebody who just doesn't have the technicality, and kind of has reservations about getting involved and being a part of the community? I noticed that one of the things you're really good at is reaching out to people and just kind of making people feel at ease. And I know that as non-devs and people who come from a background much like ourselves, which may not necessarily have a technical aspect, they're a little bit hesitant to get involved in the community anymore. What could you say ultimately, or what would be your words to encourage them to do so?
I think what you're doing now is actually a great example. You're kind of providing that pathway. You're showing folks, hey, as long as you put forth a good effort and you become visible in the community, you answer questions to the best of your ability, and you're helping the community by you're helping a lot of developers, and folks get the word out about what they're doing. Excuse me, which is important for them. I'm kind of, for folks who are new to the community, they look at me and go, well, who is this guy? I mean, I see him there with the Alliance, but where did he come from? I'm just guessing. I don't know, but it was a while ago, so I think you're providing kind of a good example now. And I think we'll see more folks do that too. As the price starts to go back up, the community will explode again, I imagine. Right. Yeah. So it's really about finding what you would like to do and finding what you are good at, and then just doing the best you can with it. And every time someone has a question in the community and you know the answer, just dive in and say, hey, here's what I know, and here's a link to what I found about it, or I know about it. If you do that enough times, people start to recognize your name and see you around, and they start to appreciate what you're doing. I think that's kind of one of the reasons why it's that aligned interest community that kind of really got me excited at first. And we're going back to DAX again, but yeah, it's just a different dynamic. I mean, it's unlike anything else that you're doing, because if you're in a regular community, like say you're on Reddit in a non-cryptocurrency or non-EOS type of Reddit, say you're over in the Ponies Reddit, right? Yep. and you want to talk about ponies and you offer some help, you're not specifically by helping that person out. You're not helping increase the value of whatever they hold, right? You're not helping improve their lives outside of the little factoid that you just gave them. When you do that in EOS, you are potentially, in their mind, or possibly even in the real world, enhancing the value of EOS just a little bit. You know, maybe some whale out there saw one of your videos and he saw NS James talk about scatter, and it lit the light bulb in that guy's mind. He went and did some research. He got his company involved, and now they're building on EOS. So maybe you've made that huge difference. It's the ripple effect.
For sure.
I think that anyone can do that. You just have to dive in and sort of do what you can do best.
For sure. No, I appreciate it. I think it definitely takes all kinds, right? And in order to hit a mass adoption, I mean, that name in itself involves a lot of different characters, a lot of different skill sets, and a lot of different mindsets. So I think that, you know, I appreciate your compliments 100%. And I just really have a good time doing these. I'm honored to be here. But I think that the more people that we can kind of pull into the community from these different mindsets, backgrounds, or just kind of people who may think differently, I think ultimately it's going to benefit the community in a whole. I guess my next question is what, aside from EOSGO and aside from your part in the Alliance, what are kind of your future ambitions and you know, things that you're kind of looking towards as EOS unfolds?
This is I've always been big about the dApps, right? Way back since we was working with EOSGO, I had this grand eventual goal. I would just love to help build a dApp. This is going to sound dumb, but
it's not going to sound dumb.
When I first told, when Blue Jays and I met up in January, you know, he flew up to my area and we decided to drive up to sit down with Dan and those guys in Block 1 in Blacksburg. And I told him this. I was like, you know, the whole reason I'm doing this, I want to, my girlfriend, you know, hopefully my future wife, yes. She is in vet school. And so I think when it comes to veterinarians, or it comes to any medical field, or even a lot of professionals, there's just no easy way for them to sort of collaborate and to work together. I think a DAC could be extremely powerful in the hands of researchers, in the hands of anyone in the medical field. It would be ideal if there was some kind of, I'm talking about an in-office piece of software where I'm forgetting the name right now, what they call a point of contact kind of piece of software. They're inputting all their information, having a blank right now. But yep. Ideally that insurance. So basically, if you think about pet insurance, which is a kind of a funny business that is not fully developed up in the United States, pet insurance would be something that would benefit from blockchain, right? Could be a source of revenue to help these veterinarians who are trying to pay their bills. Veterinarians are not paid very much, right? And so ideally we could set up some kind of system where we're able to have we can help them build the software in their offices and also have customers buying pet insurance for a much cheaper rate than they can get anywhere else. Pet insurance is an exploding industry, but it's also very expensive right now, kind of out of the range for a lot of people. So it would help the end customer, because when you bring your pet into the veterinarian's office, often the veterinarian and the pet owner end up on sort of different sides of what they actually want, because the pet owner is like, well, I want to save my pet, but I don't have $10,000. Yes. Is there anything else we can do? So on and so forth. So I think in general, benefit the animals, you benefit the veterinarians, you're going to benefit the patient as well. So that's kind of something I kicked around in my mind back in December. Started EOSGO with Blue Jays, and it's been pushed way back in my mind. I haven't even thought about it much since. Yeah. I think it's still back there. So I think somewhere way down the line here, when a few years down the line, EOS Alliance is doing great and everything else, I might be able to just start doing that again, and hopefully have the developer contacts from folks that also feel the same way I do eventually. So
you might be sitting there right now thinking, like, this guy thinks I'm crazy. But yeah. I'm going to tell you a really quick story, and it's not about me, but I had a French bulldog that I'm very much in love with, still do, Senior Burrito, who is like, he's my little buddy, man. And we first got him, and right off the bat, he got struck with parvo. The fortunate thing was that the bill from the vet ended up being close to $10,000, and we thought we were going to lose him. We didn't, fortunately. And the one saving grace was the fact that we had signed up for pet insurance the day that we bought him, and our $10,000 bill or our $9,000 bill quickly became $400 or $500. So I think I understand. I get it. That's what I'm trying to tell you. I can relate to that, and I think that pet insurance is huge, because they're our family members and we don't have any structure in place, when things happen to them. And man, you get attached to your animals. If there's a way that you can figure out to do it better and do it kind of in a community-based system, I think that's a great answer. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I totally get you, and I like the idea, and I'm looking forward to hearing about the future of that, because I think it's interesting. I do want to ask you, where's your fascination with the community and governance come into play? Like, what really kind of drew you into that?
Well, it's the fact that with a centralized entity, you have someone to call when you're in trouble or when you're having an issue, right? Blockchain, you kind of need that as well, I think, for a lot of successful dApps. We'll need that at least.
Yeah.
That's why the arbitration layer will probably work at the dApp level. When it comes to the wider protocol, I think it can also still work. As I mentioned earlier, we need to have those conversations and really determine and drill in a little more. But I think when we have anytime we have a large group of people who are very passionate about their subject, which we have to be because we own a part of this, right? We're all in the same thing, and it's part of our value going up and down. So we are kind of more invested than the average situation. It's when there's value involved, there's going to be a lot of you need to have some way to come together and make decisions and have a framework to work within. It can't just be ultimate chaos. We've seen how the chaos works out so far. I'm sure Thomas talked a little bit about this with you as well. It's Wild West and everybody can just steal from each other and it's no big deal because that's the way it is. Well, that's the old way of thinking, I think. We used to actually go out and do duels in the streets back in the early 1800s in the United States. You didn't like somebody, you challenged them to a duel, go outside, and right in the middle of the street, people are shooting each other. And that's just the way life was, right?
Yeah,
it's not like that today. So we don't have to say exactly the same as it's always been. I think that's what drew me to a governed blockchain, is just knowing that it's time for an evolution. Of course, EOS is already an evolution in so many other ways, the scalability and the lack of fees and everything else. We don't need to evolve too much all at once necessarily. We can sort of take baby steps, which is almost unheard of in crypto. Everything moves so at everything moves at light speed rather. So we'll see if the governed blockchain is what the community actually wants or not. I think it could work eventually. I don't know yet if it can. It's still to be determined. Like I said, the arbitration needs to be worked out as well. A better constitution needs to be in place that people can actually enforce, kind of. And hopefully the Alliance could help a little bit with that in the future, if necessary. Watchdog activities are also something I'm not big on personally, so I'd need to have some help from the community with that, which is what the Alliance is all about. We need community kind of help in reporting the news, and we need to sort of help wrap that all up into one big burrito, right, and present it to the community in one spot. Kind of like a hub where outsiders can come in and go, what's this EOS all about? Oh, let me learn more about on the EOS Alliance website. And then they can spread out to the various other outlets that are reporting on this actual news. Say EOS Costa Rica, they've talked about, or Costa Rica Crypto has reported on something that is important, and we linked it in the EOS Alliance, and they go out to your links, they watch your videos, and they learn more from you. So I think in the long run, another long-winded answer, but basically the governed blockchain will benefit, hopefully, in the long run if we are able to sort of build the right structure. We don't have a lot of those pieces in place right now, so we're very far away from it actually happening, as we all know. So, for sure,
it's funny you should mention EOS Costa Rica. I've talked to those guys a lot. I like them. I think they're good guys, and they've got some really cool things coming up, which I won't get into here. But I think the world's going to be seeing a lot more of EOS Costa Rica. But I'll move past that. Kind of one of the last questions before I get where people can kind of come and get in contact with you is, one of the things that really intrigues me about this, one of the things that dragged me into the wormhole about EOS is the fact that we're not just, and it's something I talked to Thomas about, we're not just moving around money anymore. Like EOS, some of the dApps that are coming out offer some real social value and some real social impact. And I know that that's something that you're kind of interested in as well. It's just the ability that we have to affect change in the world through cryptocurrency is something that excites me. I'd like to know how that kind of affects your day-to-day and some of the social problems that you see EOS in particular being used to solve on a regular basis, or will be used to. What do you think?
Some of probably the most emotional interview we ever did on EOS Radio was when we talked to EOS Nairobi. Those guys, they were talking about land corruption in Nairobi and how some people will just sell. There's no actual good ledger for who owns what. And so one person might sell the land to 10 different people, right? There's all kinds of corruption even in the courts. In countries like that where I'm not trying to say in a country that kind of some countries need blockchain more than others. Let's just put it that way, right? You can solve insurance issues, you can solve land disputes, you can solve corruption on so many different levels. And it all can be done with the mobile phone, right? Because a lot of folks there, they skipped the desktop revolution, they courted the internet revolution, now they're onto wireless phones. They have sort of a payment system from phone to phone out there. I don't remember the name of the service, but it's very expensive. They charge huge fees, middleman fees. A lot of folks can't really afford that, but it's the only option they have. If they go down to the market and they try to buy some groceries for the week, they have to pay with that phone app, right? Because that's what the vendor takes. There's so many different ways it can impact and improve life in countries like Kenya. And I think that's what part of what excites me the most. I have to admit also, even in the United States, I think there's a lack of community anymore in the United States. We go to our jobs and we come home and we isolate ourselves in front of Netflix. There's no reason to get on and try to involve in a community, get online and get involved in many ways. So I think even Steemit was a great proof of concept. It has a lot of flaws, but it gives you that first look of what a incentivized kind of interest-aligned community could try and do together, right? And it could be more granular. It could be just someone who loves cars and they join the car community, and this group of folks have, whether it's their own crypto or they have some kind of a network set up where you're able to sort of buy cars from each other and get a discount if you use the in-network, and they're able to grow their network that way and grow value for each other, share value. Currency is just the very first application of what value can be, right? And you said it well. I mean, social proof is value. Those likes on Twitter, they're valuable to some people, depending on who you are. Likes on Facebook, even more valuable to a lot of people because all your friends can see what you did. So all that stuff, if there is some value attached, if someone thinks that's important somewhere, then they should be able to benefit from that value in the long run. Right now, that's not how it is. Obviously, someone else gets to benefit from your value that you're either producing or you're seeing or that you're trying to help with. And I think everybody should be able to, if you're able to sort of provide value and then benefit from that in the long run, instead of just going to your job, providing value for somebody else, and then going back home with your paycheck. If you can actually own what you've done and produced in the world, I think that can sort of mitigate a lot of the feelings of loneliness, might even help with some mental health issues down the line. That's something I'm passionate about as well. So oppression and depression are the two I touch on in terms of oppression in countries that need help, like Kenya, and depression in other countries like the United States, where folks just don't find the value in going to work at a typical job anymore. It's not buying things and just hoping that, you're going to be happy someday is not necessarily working for a lot of people. So we'll see. I mean, that's all just large speculation in my mind. It could be 10 years down the road before we see any changes, even in EOS, to be able to do that on a mass scale, hopefully sooner. I have my fingers crossed for like 3 or 4 years. We'll see. But this is a long-term thing too. We have to keep that in mind. And sorry to interrupt you. I just want to make sure we all keep, hey, if you love EOS, you got to be patient. It's going to take a little while. It will happen. You just have to keep sticking with it.
Yeah, two comments from what you just said. Number one, totally agree. Like, we just launched this thing. People are it's opening up a ton of doors. Like, it just got built. Like, the stuff that's happening that we don't even know about, I'm sure, is mind blowing. And a lot of what you just said is touching. I know how passionate you are, and I know that a lot of people appreciate everything that you do in the community. I do. I've been a huge fan for a long time. I always will be. And then one of the things that really fascinates me is just the way that we're beginning to own our own information again through various ways, stuff that we've been giving away for a long time, and some of the decentralized applications that are putting it back in the hands of the people is absolutely mind-blowing. And like you just said, this thing is a baby. Like, it's a hatchling. It just cracked the edge, just coming out. Like, give it some time. I agree. I think that we're going to see some amazing things. As fresh as we are, there's a lot of really cool things being worked on, everything from governance to dApps and that kind of thing. So I guess my last question for you is, if people want to come and they want to talk to Kevin Wilcox, where can they find you? Where can they track you down? And what is the best place to contact you at? And then did you have anything else you want to mention before we sign off here?
I mean, you guys always hit me out, guys, please. I'm on Telegram all the time, obviously. And at Kev_EOSGO still is my username on there. I haven't changed it. Everybody kind of knows me from that already. So if you want to hit me up, PM me anytime. ping me in one of the channels, and I'll hopefully get to you, and then we can chat about it, whatever you'd like. I mean, I love the community. I love talking to folks and figuring out where everybody's from, what they're doing, and so on and so forth. That's the best place. And you can always email me too if you'd like. I'm Kevin at EOS Alliance now, EOSalliance.io, I should say. So if you have kind of a more formal something, you want to show me something that you're doing on your project, you can always email me as well. Or ping me first on Telegram and then email me. Whatever the case is, I'm down for it. And
don't forget to go and check out the EOSGO forum. I'm gonna put all the links that you just mentioned below this video, and I've started posting regularly in the EOSGO forum. And of course, anybody else who has thoughts, questions, opinions, or wants to get involved in the discussion can go there as well. So, Kevin, you're awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. It's kind of been a little surreal. Huge fan, always will be. I appreciate all the work that you do, and I'm looking forward to talking to you again in the future.
Thanks, Matt. I should say, keep up the great work you're doing. I love what you're doing. And I respect the way you're approaching it too. You're putting out great videos. You're working really hard on this, and I love it too. So I'm happy to see you doing this. And I was going to ask if you've reached out to the EOS Costa Rica guys, because I think they're phenomenal. They have they have hardware servers that they're using. They have a great logo. I just love their butterfly logo with the EOS symbols. And I'm sure they have amazing projects I don't know about. So I'm hoping that you guys can connect more, and who knows? I mean,
I've actually already interviewed them. I posted a video about that, and they're working on like these cool EOS Costa Rica like retreats where people and devs and just like people who are fond of the community can come out, hang out here, and then I'll come down and I'll kind of do interviews with some of the devs, and we'll go check out the whole, like they've got some really I'm a huge fan of those guys too. I think they're great. So you can be sure that I'll be working with them in the future and doing some more vids 100%. So
that's awesome. Yeah.
Good guys. Kevin, it's been a pleasure, man. We will talk to you hopefully super soon, and thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Matt.
Okay. See you soon.